From the creation of Kodak's very first films in the 1800s until today, Kodak has been the industry leader in film production. It wasn't until the 1930s and the creation of Kodachrome that Kodak would really take color photography to the next level. Anybody who's been in the film photography game for a minute has probably came across some of those old Kodachrome slides. Almost all of our grandparents had a box of those colorful cardboard slides laying around the house somewhere that we've encountered at some point. Kodachrome was one of the first successful color reversal films. The film was developed by two Kodak researchers, both of which, in a very strange coincidence, had the name Leopold. It was Leopold Godowski and Leopold Mans. The two researchers began working on Kodachrome in the early 1930s, and it was formally released by Kodak in 1935. And these two boys did such a good job that in 1939, they were awarded the Perkin Medal by the American Chemical Society. It's like a Grammy, but for nerds. I said it earlier in the video, but Kodachrome is a reversal film. What does that mean, you ask? Reversal film is just a positive film. Instead of making a negative on the film substrate, it actually forms a positive image. We call this slide film. And slide film is really cool. It could be projected, put the slide over a light source, project the image on the wall to view. Think of it as home movies before there were movies. Or you can make a print directly off of the negative as well. So really cool technology. And there were a couple things that Kodachrome became famous for. One was the very saturated, very realistic colors that people enjoyed from the film, provided color like no other film available at the time, but also the complex development process. And this was due to the complexity of the film. The way this would work was there would be 3 layers to the emulsion. There'd be a red layer, green layer, and a blue layer, just like you'd expect. The thing that made this different from what we think of as normal film development, and the thing that made Kodachrome so complex and difficult to work with, is that each layer had to be dyed individually during the development process. So each layer, the red layer, the green layer, and the blue layer, and then you'd go back to the lab and dye each layer red, green, and blue, the 3 layers then coming together to form a full color image. Holy crap, that's a trip. A couple of other things that Kodachrome became known for, first and foremost the high image quality, but also the high archival stability. The film was known to be really stable if the slides were well taken care of, and those slides would last for a really long time, preserving those special memories for years and years to come. And all of these qualities that we've talked about, the high image quality, the wonderful colors, and the archival ability would lead to Kodachrome becoming a really popular choice among amateurs and professionals. Over time, Kodak would release Kodachrome in many formats ranging from 35mm to medium format. There was one major drawback to Kodachrome, and it was how expensive it was. And there was a very particular reason for that. Unlike any film that we buy now presently, we buy the film, we send it off to be developed. It's 2 independent costs, right? So it's $15 for a roll of film, $10 at the lab to get it developed. But Kodachrome was unique in that it could only be developed by Kodak for a time. So Kodak would have to price in the development cost into the film sale. Despite Kodachrome's popularity amongst film photographers, unfortunately film photography itself would see a massive decline in the early 2000s due to the onset of digital photography. And this would lead to Kodak ultimately discontinuing Kodachrome in 2010. So let's take a look at some images and talk about these Kodachrome colors. Kodachrome was known for having vibrant, warm, saturated colors. They were rich. Kodachrome was also known for having a wide tonal range, from capturing very bright colors to very muted, desaturated colors, and the film having the ability to carefully distinguish between the two. Kodachrome was also known for having a very high resolution. At ISO 64, it was a very fine-grained film, capable of producing very fine detail. And as we know, the resolution of a film stock is determined by its grain size, and with the film being an ISO 64, at ISO 64, Kodachrome had relatively small grain compared to a lot of the other films available on the market at the time, making it capable of capturing very high resolution images with very fine detail. Talking a little bit more about the development process of Kodachrome, there were a number of steps involved in this process. First step was obviously exposure. Kodachrome was stuck in the back of a 35mm camera or a medium format camera, and you took a picture, exposing the film to light, storing the image in the photochemicals. And a note about the exposure times of Kodachrome: with it being a 64-speed film, you're going to get longer exposure times with this film. And this was due to having the 3 different layers that had to be independently exposed on the film base. So as simple as the first step was, taking a picture, this is where things get kind of weird. Kodachrome used the K14 development process, which everybody knows contains lots of steps. The first step in the process was to soak the film in an alkaline bath. This would soften the cellulose and allow the anti-halation rimjet layer to be removed. It's after the removal of the backing that we get to the application of the first developer. and this is a pretty standard developer. It converts the silver halide crystals into metallic silver via a PQ bath. After the film goes through the wash, the film is exposed through the backing with a red lot. And the point of exposing the film to this red lot is it makes the undeveloped silver halide layers developable through the cyan layer. The next step is the cyan develop, and this contains a cyan developer, blue, and a cyan coupler. After the blues are developed, the film is washed again. Who wants to keep track of how many times we're washing this film? The next step is blue lot exposure from the top. And the point of this, much like the red lot exposure, is to make the undeveloped silver halide crystals, this time in the blue layer, developable. What a word. The next step is the yellow developer, which is similar to the cyan developer. Consists of a yellow developer and also a yellow coupler. The next step in the process is adding the magenta developer, and this one actually contains a fogging agent which makes all remaining undeveloped silver halide crystals in the image developable. Friggin' English. And after that, we wash the film. Again, the next step is a conditioner. And this is really simple. It just prepares the metallic silver in the film for the bleach step, which leads us to the bleach step. And this step is to convert the metallic silver in the film into silver halide. And now we're finally at what looks more like a normal film development lab. We're at the fixing step. The point of the fix step, as ever, is to convert the silver halides into soluble compounds. And we wash the film again, this time to wash away those soluble compounds. After that, we rinse the film and we dry it. Whew! I can see why Kodak and other labs don't want to fool with K14 anymore, because that was a mouthful. And if you can believe it, that was the more simplified, modern K14 development process. The original process from the 1930s actually contained more steps and was even more complex. So, goodness gracious, what a process. I think it goes without saying, but the process was complex and time-consuming. The question that always comes up when we talk about Kodachrome is, will it ever come back? Obviously, over the past few years, film has been on an incredible run. Films are being announced, new cameras are being developed. Film photography is doing well, right? It's on the way back. Kodak themselves have actually brought a few films back. Kodachrome 100 being one of them, and then also Kodak Gold 200 in medium format. So Kodak has been bringing films back as well. So anytime there's a discussion of Kodachrome, the question always comes to, will Kodak ever bring it back? A film like Kodachrome with so much goodwill and fond memories and fond feelings associated with it, people would love to see it back. Not only are we asking Kodak to bring back a film, but we're asking them to bring back a whole development process that's very complex. Unfortunately, due to that very arduous development process that I just went through with you all, it's very unlikely that Kodak would bring the film back, unless they were able to reformulate Kodachrome in a way, allowing it to be developed in C41 or E6 chemicals. But then have we really got Kodachrome? So much of the look of that film came from the complex process, the way that the film was developed. Personally, I don't think that the film could be reformulated in a way where the essence would be You know, I could be wrong. It seems very unlikely to me that Kodak would be able to develop a film that was able to capture and perform much like the original Kodachrome film with modern development processes. A lot of the uniqueness of that film were down to the quirkiness of the film itself. It was developed back in the 30s, and it had this very weird, unique process that led to the look of that film. You know, maybe Kodak's R&D teams can throw something together that looks a lot like Kodachrome, but I would be surprised. All that being said, Kodachrome, really cool, an important part of photographic history, and I love looking at those old images. Speaking of looking at cool old images though, if you like these kind of videos, why don't you take a second to subscribe to my channel? I put out a video like this once a week, and I would love to have you on board. Also, if you thought this video was cool, check out my video detailing the history of Kodak Aerochrome. What a wild time that is. But as always guys, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.